Hi, everyone. I'm trying to work through this. Hopefully you can see all three of us. We appreciate y'all being on this evening as a part of our webinar series. We're starting off real well here for emerging insect threats to the beef cattle industry, including forages and everything else. So just some housekeeping notes as we start tonight. Any questions that you have will go into the Q&A box. So you should be able to see if you're joining us online or on your phone, should be able to see a Q&A box. On that, please direct any of your questions that you have there. Myself, I should have introduced myself. I'm Ashley Edwards, Extension Beef Cattle Specialist for the LSU AgCenter. Dr. Christine Navarre is our Extension Veterinarian with the LSU AgCenter, and we also have Dr. Chris Womack on with us, and we'll get more formal introductions here in a moment. But questions to the Q&A. We are going to do some presentations to start with, but there is going to be plenty of time for Q&A. So please go ahead and start jotting those questions down. I don't see that anyone has called in, but if for some reason you don't see the Q&A box, you can text me your questions throughout. So you can text me at 512-818-5476. Again, that's 512-818-5476. And with that, I think that's all the general housekeeping we have. Your mics are muted. That's just a default setting. So are your cameras to help with internet connectivity and everything else. I'll actually shut my camera off in a minute when I turn it over to Dr. Navarre and Dr. Womack. But questions to the Q&A or text me. And with that, I am going to, I guess, officially introduce Dr. Christine Navarre. I know most of y'all know her. Again, she is our state extension veterinarian and professor with the LSU AgCenter, state VQA coordinator, and many other hats that I will, I'm sure, leave out. But Dr. Navarre, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to kick us off for this evening.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Edwards. So I'm very happy to have Dr. Chris Womack with us tonight. We're going to have a 3-part series to this. Tonight, we're going to talk about New World Screwworm. And then our next one, we're going to be talking about Asian longhorn tick and thylaria, which is looming. And then the pasture mealybug, which is totally out of my area of expertise, but probably worries me more than any of them, because if we don't have forages for our cattle, then the health is kind of secondary. So I have a very short presentation that I'm going to give, and then I'm going to introduce Dr. Womack, and just to kind of set the stage here with what New World Screwworm is very, very briefly. If I can make this work. Looks like it's coming up. Okay.
Sorry, that was on my end. Yes, you should.
That's
your
okay.
Screen should be up for everybody now.
Okay. So New World Screwworm, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I think everybody at this point has been hearing about this and knows what this is. It is a blowfly that feeds on dead and dying tissue, but also on living tissue. The regular maggots that we already have are just going to feed on dead tissue. And it does affect, this is going to be livestock oriented, but it affects all warm-blooded animals. And we definitely want to know, people to know that as far as consumers go, that the properly inspected meat is safe. We do, if we treat these animals, if they become infected and we have to use some type of particularly systemic treatment, but some of our topicals, all of those are going to have residues or withdrawal times that we need to make sure that we abide by. We do, if you just go to LSU AgCenter and you put New World Screwworm into the search bar, you'll come to this page. We are trying to keep this up to date. With the resources that you need. We've got fact sheets, things there that will help you out. Screwworm.gov is also a really, really great resource that has lots of different things. The impact to the industry, high losses, we definitely want to prevent this. And we want to, if it does happen to come to Louisiana, the sooner that we find that, the better that we're gonna be. I do want to show you, so this is the map as of yesterday from the Texas Animal Health Commission website. And you can see the infested zones there in yellow, and then those blue areas around are just increased surveillance areas. So if you go to the Texas Animal Health Commission website and just the New World Screwworm page pops right up, and you can get to that map, and you can actually put in addresses. So if for some reason you're traveling into Texas and then coming back, you're gonna want to know where you're going. One of the things we're telling people too is that if you're traveling to an area of Texas that's not in an infested zone today, it could be an infested zone tomorrow. So just be ready to deal with that if that happens. This is from the screwworm.gov, and it lists, so as of yesterday, we have 41 cases. And you can go to this website and you can scroll down, you can search. And the majority of cases so far have been in livestock, cattle. Calf umbilicuses is a really favorite place for this. And this map looks a little bit different from the Texas map because this actually shows the cases. The Texas map, that shows the zones of infection. And so a case going inactive is very different from an area going inactive. A case, so if a case gets diagnosed, let's say we have a calf umbilicus, that calf gets treated, and as soon as that umbilicus is healed up and there's no more larvae there, that case can go inactive, but the entire area where that case was is going to stay an infested zone for probably about 3 months, as long as there are no more cases in the area. So just so everybody's kind of aware of that. And then I wanted to show this map. This is at screwworm.gov. This is the situation in Mexico, but what I really wanted you to see here is this green zone is where the sterile flies are being released currently. So the other thing we want to think about, and what we're going to talk about tonight, is prevention and inspecting early and often. And we're going to get Dr. Womack's take on how he's managing his cattle, sheep, and goat herds. Preventing wounds, this is where low stress handling really is important, making sure we inspect those facilities. So if we do have to run cattle through the chute, reviewing our herd health and management procedures with your veterinarian. This is going to be important not only for this, but for when we talk about thyleria next week. Well managed, very healthy herds that have a robust immune system are going to fight off anything that we throw off at them much better. And then you're going to want that relationship with the veterinarian, because some of the treatments, we're not going to go over that tonight, but and that's changing all the time because they're adding new ones, which is good. But there's some rules that go along with those treatments that that as veterinarians we're keeping up with. And then making sure that we strengthen our biosecurity and reporting. We've got to report this if we find it. If we report it and we have it, then we get the flies, or we get some of the flies, which is what we want to slow that down. So if you suspect it, we've got a protocol that's on our website that kind of goes through step by step, not only how to treat the wound, how to prevent the larva from dropping off into the ground and continuing the cycle. So it's kind of a collection treatment protocol all together. One of the things that we want people to know is that, we do not want to move those animals. And if we are cleaning out those maggots, anytime you see maggots, we want to collect them. We want to collect a lot of them and from different places in the wound, and not move those animals. We want to keep those animals where they are. Having biosecurity plans is really important all the time, but when you start thinking about this and if we get it in Louisiana, chances are it's going to come in on a truck and trailer with something, or a dog or something that gets hauled into the state. Yes, it could migrate over here naturally, but that could take a while. And so we need to be on the lookout all the time. We have biosecurity planning materials that we have a biosecurity plan template that is specifically geared towards cow-calf operations here in Louisiana. It's a fillable PDF. You can fill that out. Your veterinarian will have some input into that because it talks about some tests that you might need to do, and we'll talk more about that next week with Thylaria. So let's see if I can stop sharing. Or Ashley, can you turn off my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Thank goodness for Ashley.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh gosh, don't jinx me.
Yeah. So I want to thank Dr. Womack for joining us. He is a veterinarian. He graduated from Texas A&M in 1992. He went into a private mixed animal practice in West Central Texas, San Angelo area. He's semi-retired from practice, but I can tell you he tested 120 bulls starting at 5 a.m. this morning. So he's worn out, and I'm glad we don't have smell-o-vision through Teams. So thanks for being here after a very long day. He's not only a veterinarian, but he runs his family farm. They've got red Angus cattle, Dorper sheep, and a Spanish goat herd. Dr. Womack and I have known each other for 35 years. I did my residency at Texas A&M, and he was there as a student. And so we've known each other for a long time. And lately we've been talking about once a week since this started, because about 3 years ago, he and I were at a meeting together, and he told me that we were going to get screwworm again. And I didn't think he was correct. And lo and behold, he was, unfortunately. Because here we are, we've got it back in Texas. So again, thank you for being with us. So just to start us off, Dr. Womack, would you kind of describe your cattle and sheep and goat operation so that people can kind of know when we start talking about the things you've done from a management standpoint, that you started before this even got to Texas, knowing that you were in an area where it definitely may show up. And then we'll get into some more specifics about what you're doing with screwworm. So.
Sure. Sure. We were at Texas A&M together, and you must have been much younger, a savant and a young student, because I'm old. And I'm old enough to remember having to treat screwworms when I was a kid growing up. We had them here in West Central Texas on the Edwards Plateau, and starting back about the early 70s, they recurred, and we had incursions from Mexico up into this area of Texas, and we had in 1972 we had 95,000 positive cases in Texas. So it was a significant issue, and I remember it as a kid. Specifically treating calves and sheep with New World screwworm myiasis. So when I got wind of the breakdown in the biological barrier in Panama is when I sounded the alarm to whoever would listen, and Dr. Navarre was one of the few people that did listen. And the writing was on the wall. The problem has occurred because of uncontrolled movement of livestock south to north. I mean, plain and simple, this wasn't a natural migration of the parasite. We didn't undo 50 years of progress in 3 years without human intervention in those animals being moved north to south. What I have done management-wise already for my herds, I started last year. Our sheep and goat herds, we were lambing and kidding twice a year. Early fall and late spring, and we we decided that we weren't going to take that risk, and we moved to single breeding and lambing and kidding season in the starting in November. Will be done by end of January. Our cattle herds, we already calve in typically in February and March. We've done a few management techniques, and we're trying to move it back closer to the end of January and be through by the end of February. We have enough winter here that even if the screwworm becomes really well established in West Central Texas, which it already has, winter will be our friend, and it'll beat the parasite back to warmer climates south of the border. I live in my house. I'm sitting right now in an infested zone. The clinic that I still own is in an infested zone. Two of my family properties are in two different infested zones. So it's got pretty real for us right now. Other management techniques that we need to think about with my specific herd is we already have a pretty narrow calving window. We breed over 60 days. We calve over realistically about 45 to 50 days. So that allows us to work our calves in the spring before the fly season starts out here. We have already taken corrective measures when we do process. We have Red Angus base, but my son has Hereford bulls, and he has a terminal cross red whiteface calf. Some of them have horns. When we dehorn them, we're using cautery. We are using Catron spray around the wounds. We use a IU shield to coat the wounds. We deworm our calves anyway. So we continue to do that, and we dewormed our calves and we use injectable Womack this year at working. Castration sites, same kind of thing. We spray Catron around those. We put IU shield on the wound itself. When we were ear tagging, I sprayed some Catron on the ear tag. I sprayed Catron when we were implanting. These terminal cross calves, they're all meat animals. We're not keeping any of them as heifers. We implant everything. I sprayed some Catron on the implant side. Again, we worked our kid goats and lambs back in February, so they've already been marketed. We marketed all our kids and lambs before our property became an infested zone. So that's a whole nother issue, getting the animals out of infested zones out here. That could be a entire seminar on the challenges of that. I'm facing some challenges trying to get my clients slaughter animals, sheep and goats specifically, out of Texas to other states, and it's been a challenge. It's been very challenging. So we're drinking from a fire hose on some of this stuff right now.
Yeah. And we're learning with you, and hopefully we'll learn, have some lessons learned from how things have gone in Texas. Talk about your daily routine. Has that changed at all, as far as, you and I have discussed the labor issues, and I think there was an example I heard a rancher from Texas talk about that when in the 60s, when they had screwworm, they had 34 employees, and now they have 4. So tell us a little bit about, has your daily routine changed? How are you managing getting eyes on these animals? Things like that.
Well, from my gotta get the dogs out of the way. My standpoint, I do spend more time observing my cattle. I don't live where all of my animals live. We operate over 3 different counties, and we're spread out. My sons and I, you know, some of the lease country, if we get there once a week, we're doing good. We had to change our breeding seasons to mitigate that. But even we had a case in Pecos County that a client of mine, it was adult ewes that were grazing improved pastures, and the screwworms laid eggs in the tear ducts.
Wow.
And they migrated out through the dermis in the tear ducts. I when he called me, I said, "Oh, these are out in pasture and they're eating prickly pear and they got wounds." He goes, "No, they're under a pivot, improved pasture, grass, and they're adult ewes." And I'm sure it was dusty, and maybe a little extra moisture around the tear ducts, but they blew the adult use tear ducts. So what, you know, how do you mitigate that? Observation. That's the only way you can mitigate that. So I'm consciously spending more time, especially with my favorite cattle. I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I do observe them more. We honest to goodness, we check some waters with game cameras. We have game cameras that are on our water facilities. That's an option. Using game cameras would be an option. More observation for the wildlife people. Again, we've been blessed with good rain, so the deer aren't really coming to feeders right now. But that's an option. We do use drones. We do have drones that we use ourselves, mostly to locate cattle, but that would be an option for people. If you can't get around your pastures, you know, that's a way to do it real easy, real quick. If you think about it, the maggot feeds on living tissue, right? So the umbilicus, the navel, is the primary location for New World Screwworm myiasis. So that's going to be a baby, right? Well, if a mama cow hides her baby, she may come to feed. You can look at her, but if baby is paid attention to his mama, he's going to be hanging out in the grass somewhere, hiding like mama told him to, and you may not be able to observe those. But you need to be aware. That's the benefit of contracting your breeding season. You can tell, well, this cow looks like she just calved. Maybe I need to spend a little extra time looking for her baby. Dipping the navels. People. I had a man call me the other day. He goes, "Oh, we had a good year. I had extra grass, so I went to the sale barn and I bought some bred cows." And he goes, "They're getting ready to some of them are spring and some of them getting ready to calve. What do I do?" And I said, "Well, you're older than I am. You remember what we did when we were kids?" And he goes, "Yeah, but I'm an old man now." And I said, "Well, maybe you need to get your grandkids around, and they may need a little lesson in husbandry here, because he is in an infested zone." He goes, "What do I do?" I said, "Well, watch them, get them up in a trap. This may make people change their ideas. They may have to resurrect some of these old wormy traps that we have out in this part of the world. When I was a kid, people had wormy traps. If you had a calf, you had a lamb, you had a kid goat, foal, whatever, that had myiasis, we treated them, but then they brought them to the wormy traps so they could keep an eye on them until they healed. Wasn't a quarantine for now and forever, but it was a quarantine, quote unquote quarantine, on the ranch in a wormy trap until that lesion was healed. Then they could go back to the pasture, go about their normal business. I'm retired mostly, but still get a lot of calls every day. And my routine, my livestock has changed a little bit, but not a whole lot. Again, we're at a place in our production cycle where our calves have been worked long ago. Everything's healed up. We're in a growing phase right now. We're not going to have we're not going to have another event in our production cycle for another couple, 3 months. We'll wean calves, we'll background calves, we'll preg check cows. Again, what are we going to do if we're preg checking cows? Could we cause a wound? Do we ever have blood on our glove when we're preg checking cows? Yeah, sometimes. Are they going to go through a chute? Yeah, they're going to go through a chute. Could you run the risk of them scratching themselves or creating a wound or knocking the hide off their hip coming around a corner? Well, sure. So we're already planning. They're going to get their pre-calving deworming anyway. They were going to get that. So we're just going to make sure we use injectables instead of topicals. We'll use injectable Dectomax on those cows and then put a topical permethrin on them. We're going to be weaning calves. So what are we going to be doing to them? There's a few calves we missed horns on when they were babies. So we're going to have to dehorn a few of these crossbred calves. So we're going to have to mitigate that. What are we going to do? We're going to do just like we did on the babies at working. We're going to cauterize them. We're going to use an insecticide around the wound. We're going to use an occlusive on the wound. And we're going to give them an injectable Dectomax or Dormectin. It's not impossible, but I mean, and it's not really impractical for us. It's not really changing a whole lot of what we do, but people freak out and they call me, oh my gosh, Dectomax works. We're in an infested zone. We're going to gather our cattle every 3 weeks and give them a shot of Dectomax. That's silly if it's not in your production. You know, where are you in your production cycle? The example that he bought bred cows to the sale barn, he has no control over that. I guess he could take them back to the sale barn and sell them, but he's going to have to mitigate that. He's going to have to watch those cows when they calve. He's going to have to gather them up, dip navels with iodine, give those baby calves a shot of Dectomax or ivermectin. Watch the mama cows, check their vulva after they calved. Do they ever get a small tear in their vulva calving? Even if you don't have to pull a calf, normal birth, do they ever get tears in their vulva? Absolutely. So you have to pay attention to them too. Observation and mitigation is going to be important for those people. So
yeah, I will make
the idea behind that, given the Dectomax every 3 weeks. If you're like a bunch of us right now, this time of year, there's no reason to do that. You're going to risk injuring those animals, running them through the chute, gathering them. What if people that use dogs to gather?
Yeah.
You know, to get cows out of the brush. You know what? We're going to have to maybe muzzle some dogs, or you're going to have to rethink things. These hanging tree dogs out here, bloody ears are not going to be acceptable.
No.
You're going to have to get those. You're darn sure going to have to get those cattle caught because you're going to have to treat them if the dogs are after them. So
yeah,
I know that's a big deal for y'all.
Well, a comment about the dewormers. So yeah, I mean, we've already got resistance to these two products that are approved, ivermectin and Dectomax on the internal parasite side, pretty bad. And we know that there's, if you look at the literature, the effectiveness of those products is highly variable, actually. So the label says up to 21 days, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work that long. And the more we use these products, the more that the screwworm is then going to get resistant. So I think because you're in an infested zone, using some of those products is going to be different than like us. We're just sitting here hoping we don't get it. You know, let's not use those. Let's, like you said, use those dewormers like you would in your regular management.
Sure.
So yeah, and it's a good point about dogs, because yeah, it's kind of one of my pet peeves is dogs around cows, and especially around chutes, sometimes is more dangerous and causes more injuries than they help.
So we do. So in infested zones, again, back to where you are in your production cycle, if you're shipping those animals, if you got calves, lambs, kids, ewes, maybe you preg checked and you're selling cull cows, to leave the infested zones, they have to be treated. So some of those, what if they're slaughter animals? We give them a shot of Dectomax, but it's a 35-day withdrawal. I mean, that doesn't make sense. So there's provisions for inspection and identification. Some topical treatments sometimes could be used, but that's a case by case. The uniform methods and rules for that here are difficult to ascertain and difficult for the application is difficult because of so many different situations. So we're having a lot of growing pains, and learning curve is real steep out here with that. If the inspectors tell somebody that they have to treat their sheep or their goats to leave an infested zone, and their 60 weight lambs or 100 weight lambs, they're going to slaughter. And our tissue residues, the volatile, in violation is the correct thing I'm trying to say. Having those tissue levels in violation is a big deal, and this is not a food safety issue. The parasite is not a food safety issue. Once you treat it, it's gone. But us trying to treat and not paying attention and having residues in our meat is a food safety problem. So that's a big deal that people have to be aware of. Again, I was asked by a reporter one time, she says, "Oh my gosh, my mom's a foodie anyway, and she's worried about worms in the meat." Well, that's not what's happening here. This is not a food safety issue. Okay. Has to be feeding on living tissue, not a carcass, not a slaughtered carcass.
Yeah, and I know, there's some growing pains on getting cattle and other animals out. One thing I don't think a lot of people were aware, because I don't think it gets enforced, but moving cats and dogs sometimes requires a health paper, and it doesn't happen a lot, but it's happening now. And I think we want everybody to be aware, and one of the reasons we put some of our biosecurity materials and trainings together is when something like this happens. So USDA is in Texas, collaborating with Texas Animal Health Commission, and USDA has a playbook that they're going by, but a state can put regulations above what USDA requires. So when it comes to moving our cattle out of state, we have to abide by wherever they're going, and there's some regulations there that might, if we get it in Louisiana, who knows if this gets worse. Some of those states may require some things that are a little bit out of the ordinary. Canada just shut down anything coming from Texas or going through Texas. And a question I got was, well, why not just from infested zones? Well, because the infested zones change daily. So it's very difficult. And so, it's just easier to put it as a state. So, just everybody needs to be ready that if they're ready to ship calves and something happens, they need to have a plan in place. We need emergency action plans to, what if I have to keep those calves? What if, if my shipment date is this and all of a sudden we have an infection or an infestation, that could change, and we just need everybody to be prepared. So you are vice chair of the Cattle Health and Wellbeing Committee for Texas Cattle Raisers. Tell us a little bit about that and some of the activities you've done. You've been down to Panama for them, and that's how you kind of found out that this was going to happen. So
Yes. Several members of us were on that group that went to Panama. It was a different group that we were with as a whole, but several of us that were there were members of the TSCRA. My role as the vice chairman is TSCRA has been one of the forerunners on trying to get the word out about the problem. We've been working on it for a couple of years
3
now.
years. Yeah.
And what do we have to offer people? Why is it a big deal? You talk to people from Brazil, they're like, why is everybody worried about it? It's just screwworms. We deal with it all the time. That's just the way that's just part of doing business. It's a big deal because we got 50 years of generational ignorance as to how to mitigate the impact of the screwworm on our herds. Ignorance doesn't mean stupid. I can fix ignorance with education. I can't fix stupid sometimes, but our role is to try, obviously our constituency, our membership, we want to provide them with all the tools necessary, all the educational tools necessary to help make their plans. But we collaborate with other organizations like Texas Farm Bureau, Extension, Texas Parks and Wildlife. We've been to meetings, we have meetings, we hold educational seminars, Q&A sessions. We have a weekly Q&A session through our TSCRA Cattle Health and Wellbeing and Cattle Parasite Subcommittee. Every Thursday from 1 to 2, we have a Q&A where our membership, anybody, general public, can ask questions and we answer them. I mean, that's part of our role, our charge, I guess, as the committee leadership, is to provide information and provide education. I can't go all around the state and be everybody's veterinarian. I have to give them the tools and the information to go to their local veterinarian, their veterinarian, and establish that relationship so they can go forward with their own plans. We can give them the ideas and I'm telling you, sifting through some of the misinformation that's out there and available to people, that I think that is probably one of our most important roles with education, is to try to be the voice of reason, the correct voice, the scientific based answers, not some of the knee-jerk internet fringe element, poorly documented information. So,
well, thank you
does
for
that
that.
answer your question?
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, thanks for your service on that and your work. I know you've been on a lot of webinars, a lot of podcasts, and you've been all over. And I appreciate you saying yes to us. We are open for questions, so if anybody has any questions, please put those in the chat while we've got Dr. Womack. Again, a world of information and going through it firsthand right now, and we hope we don't have to do that, but if this until we get a lot more flies, it has the potential to continue to spread.
We have, our supply of flies is finite. It's limited. The facility in Panama, Copeg, is really the only place in the world that's producing flies right now. And they have a capacity of about 100 million. And that's what they belong to us. You showed the map of the dispersal. Well, those flies have been brought from Panama to South Texas to Moore Air Base, and then that's the distribution facility. We're working on constructing a new fly production facility down there, which would have a greater capacity of somewhere reported to be 300 million a week. There's a fruit fly facility in Matapa, Mexico, that the United States paid Mexico to retool to produce sterile screwworm flies, and it's reported to be online already, and the first batch is up for sterilization and released by the end of this month. I hope that comes. I hope that comes true. We have enough with vigilance, with reporting, with movement controls, with treating animals in the infested zones. We have enough fly capacity right now for control. We do not have enough fly capacity for re-eradication.
Right. Yeah.
It's endemic now from Mexico to northern Argentina. Just like it was back in the pre-1950, 1960s. It's endemic in Mexico. So to re-eradicate it, we need to get back to those massive numbers of sterile flies like we had back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah.
And we were producing, I think the old plant down in Matapa was, I want to say it was 500 million a week.
Yeah.
I mean, we still had, I think 300 or 400 million being produced at Moore Air Base back in the 60s and 70s. So there was an enormous amount of flies being produced, and it worked. And we started north and we went south, and guess what? As you go south, the land mass in Central America is much more narrow. The isthmus of Tehuantepec in Mexico is 120 miles wide. Yeah. I mean, I drove more than that today. You know.
Yeah.
You get down to Panama and it's 60 miles wide.
Yeah.
So that was a natural stopping point for us. Everybody's like, well, why didn't we just go on to South America and eradicated all of South America? Well, if you look at the map, that land mass is enormous.
Huge. Yeah.
Once you get out of Panama, it's enormous. So
and if you look at that the map of the history of kind of getting it further and further south, I mean, we were, late 60s. There still had a few cases in the 70s, but I mean, it took till the 80s, I think, to finally get it below Panama. So this is not going away. We're not going to get back to where we were. It's going to be decades. So that's unfortunate.
2002 is when Panama was free.
Yeah.
It was 50 year. It took 50 years. Once the program started here in the Southwest, it took 50 years to get it down to Panama. Yeah. And the crying shame of it is we undid 50 years worth of work in about 3 years. And I say we collectively, humans, did that by moving those animals south to north.
Yeah, and hopefully there is a technique called NovaFly, which is under EPA approval process now that would increase the number of males. So right now, when we actually put out sterile flies, it's a mix of males and females. It's about half and half, but that would cut down the number of females and increase the number of males. So if that gets approved, that could really help us until we get the plant in Texas back up. So
the word on the street is that plant in Mexico, in Matapa, is going to utilize the NovaFly technique.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that would be great, because that's going to it's going to double the capacity.
Yeah. That would be great.
Instead of being half boys and girls, it's going to be all boys. And the male is the workhorse. That's what the sterile male is, what does the trick.
Yeah. Well, if anybody has any questions, put those in. If not, we will. Oh, do we have
We
questions?
do have one. Yeah, we
Oh.
have one in the chat. Mr. Dave
Oh, it's in
Billingsley
the
was
chat.
having a
Okay.
hard time. Yeah, it's
That's
in the
okay.
chat. He was having a hard time with his audio when he first signed
Okay.
in. So his question was, or is, excuse me, should we give a small dose of Ivomec or Dectomax when processing newborn calves?
I would say here, if you're in Louisiana, we do not have it now. I would say no.
Yeah.
You don't need it. We want calves, so we don't want to try to sterilize calves of worms because we are losing that battle. We've got a lot of resistance already. I actually was involved in a case where they were deworming calves 3 times before they were weaned, and then they were weaned on a contaminated pasture and they just completely fell apart because they didn't have any natural immunity. We want calves to be exposed to a little bit of parasites so they build some natural immunity. And I can tell you, and I've done testing all over the country, and we're seeing ivermectin work anywhere from 18% to bull test in New York State was 30% effective, all the way up to highly effective. So you just don't know. We don't want to make that worse. Now, if we get in an infested zone, that very well may change, but don't think that you can just give them a shot and not watch them. Because if you look at some of the research, some of it sometimes where these flies originated from in South America, they were 0% effective in some studies. In some studies, they're 100% effective. So you can't just give them a shot and forget about them. You're still going to have to dip those navels. You need to watch them until those navels heal up. So anything to add, Dr. Womack?
Well, again, here in an infested zone, if you're unfortunate enough to be calving right now, if you can put your hands on them, dip their navels, that's going to go a long way. You talk to colleagues in Central America right now, and they're having to relearn what to do, and they are given an injection of. Most of them are using dormectin, 1 cc of dormectin, while they at the same time, if they put their hands on them to dip navels, they will give them an injection. You talk to the people in Brazil. A lot of them use either a product called Sidental, which is a liquid carbamate and a pyrethroid, or a product called Negasunt, which is an organophosphate, a pyrethroid, and a sulfa drug. And it's, they'll powder the navels with that. Some people just use iodine. And don't give them any kind of injectable. I would say it depends.
Yeah.
If you're not in an infested zone, I'm with you. I wouldn't, just like the question about gathering cattle and giving them an injection at Dectomax every 3 weeks. That's silly. It's counterproductive. We're not supposed to do any harm, right? That's our charge as veterinarians, is not to, above all, do no harm, right? There's applications of some of these dewormers. If they don't work, great, but if you apply them in a manner that's ineffective, it's doing harm. Doing harm. So that's a question that I would say it depends on your circumstances.
Yeah.
Probably
and
for y'all, I would agree. Don't do it.
Yeah, not right now. If we get it, it may change. And again, this is where, your own veterinarian that knows your management knows, and it's why thinking about your calving season, question for you. If you know in your area, this is going to be around for a while. If you have people that are fall calving, are you recommending that they look at the entire, obviously that's a bigger decision than just screwworm. There's economics involved, and
yes.
But what are you in general kind of coaching people to do?
In general, I was in Panama about 5 weeks ago, and I was asked to give a lecture to ag students down there on management techniques to mitigate the impact of the screwworms on their herds going forward. What do I tell them? They don't have winter.
Right.
We got a wet season and dry season. Well, that may mitigate it a little bit, but what can you tell them? I told them to shorten their calving season, plain and simple. Make it shorter. What's that going to do? That's besides the management benefits of disease surveillance and efficiency. Besides all that, if it concentrates their labor,
Yeah.
that's going to be helpful. If all the calves are born about the same time, if you have to hire temporary labor for calving season, let's do it. Is that going to, when you mark calves, you can concentrate you're going to be marking them all at once instead of having to mark calves every 3 or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever, year round. Just control it. So for us, we're trying to manipulate the seasonality of our climate out here. And fall calvers, I got some that are going to start in the next month. Could we still have flies here in September? You betcha. You betcha. When are we going to have our first frost? If I knew that, I would win the lottery. So we could have our first frost by the end of October. So you're great. If you move it to October, into October, November, you're going to probably be fine. But sometimes we don't have frost until December.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're still rolling the dice. You have management decisions that I can't answer for you.
Yeah.
I would tell you that everybody would benefit by tightening that calving season down.
That's good.
You got to start. You got to start by controlling the breeding season.
Yeah.
That's how that happens. And gathering the bulls, warehousing bulls somewhere. For us, warehousing billy goats. Oh my gosh.
Ugh.
That's
glad
terrible.
that's you and not me.
Yeah.
We have
move them
one
70
more.
miles.
Yeah, we have a question about how many years do you think it will take to get this under control? I guess the question is the definition of control. So, we talked about how it took decades to get it, back to Panama. So we're not even thinking about that right now. But if in a couple of years, maybe this plant comes on and say late 27, early 28, and we start flying a lot more flies, I think some of it, in my opinion, is going to depend on how far it's spread by then. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if we can in short order get the sterile fly facilities up and running, we have better tools available to us now than we did back then. What's the ups and downs? What's different between what was our life in the 70s, 60s, and 70s and what our life is like now. In the ag business anyway. We had a lot more people living in the country, living with the animals back then. We had cheaper labor back then, experienced cheaper labor. Yeah. Now we got a lot of absentee ownership. We have a lot of, it's difficult to get help. It's expensive to get help. And it's even more difficult and more expensive to get help that knows how to handle livestock. Yeah. So, I would tell you that we get the Matapa plan up and running. If they adhere to what their projected production is, especially if we can get the Novo Fly up there, that's going to bring us up pretty quick to, 150 to 200 million a week. Until we get the big production facility in South Texas up and running, that's probably going to be another, they're projecting April of 27.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but you still have to get the colonies going.
Yeah.
You have to, there's an art and a science behind being able to artificially rear the brood colonies.
Right.
To produce those big numbers. And that's a gradiated, that's an exponential growth there that has to take place. And I don't know how long that will take. we're not going to get rid of it here in the States for another, several years. Those kids in Panama, I told them it's going to be a decade or more before they're going to have the sterile flies available to them there domestically. They make them in Panama. They were making them about 70 miles from where I was lecturing, and they won't have access to them.
Right.
And that's just the way it is for them, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
I don't think it'll take another 50 years. I don't know. I won't be around to see it if it takes that long. I hope it's going to be more rapid, but it is going to be a decades-long re-eradication and reestablishment of that buffer zone in Panama.
Yeah.
It's going to be decades.
Yeah.
Domestically, I hope it's just a year or two.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any more questions coming in. So we're getting ready to hit the top of the hour, and I know that you are exhausted from testing 120 bulls today. So we're going to let you go, and I so appreciate this. I will see you down the road at a conference here next month, and really appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
No burning questions from you.
I don't see any, so nope.
Yeah. Not that we could address in 5 minutes.
No, I can always call you in. We'll figure it out. So yeah.
Okay. All right. I enjoyed it. Always. It's I'm not an expert. I don't work for the government. I don't work for academia. I would like to think that I'm an interested party, and I may have a little bit more than the average knowledge base.
I would say
Fair
definitely
enough?
you do. Yep.
All right.
Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we hope to see you in a couple of weeks to talk about Asian longhorn tick and thylaria.
Yes, thank y'all all. And we will have this recorded and up on YouTube and then our new World Screwworm website, or one of our websites, but we'll get it out through email and through social media. So y'all will be able to reference back to it and share it as well. From my end, thank you, Dr. Womack. Appreciate you being on here for us this afternoon.
Right.
Absolutely.
Bye, everybody.
Happy to do it.